The African American Legends series highlights the accomplishments of blacks in areas as varied as politics, sports, aviation, business, literature, religion, and education. We will explore how African Americans have succeeded in areas where they've been previously excluded because of segregation, racism, and lack of opportunity. I'm your host, Dr. Roscoe C. Brown, Jr., and with us today is Darwin Davis, the CEO of the New York Urban League, and we'll be talking about their recently issued report, The State of Black New York. Darwin, welcome to African American Legends, and tell us about the state of Black New York.
Roscoe,
how did you conceive of this project? Who got it started for you, and what are you doing to spread the word?
Sure. As you may know, The State of Black New York is a publication of the New York Urban League and has been so for the last 40 years. It patterns itself after The State of Black America, which our national parent organization, the National Urban League, publishes periodically as well. This particular publication came about because we had not done one in the last 7 years. The last publication came out in 2000. And we thought that aligning ourselves with a partner, the Black Equity Alliance this year.
Pardon me, could you explain to the public what the Black Equity Alliance is?
Sure. The Black Equity Alliance is an organization started about 2004. Might be a little off on that day, but about 2004, under the auspices of the United Way, spearheaded by the Black board members of the United Way, to create a Black federation, and a federation under which many Black issues and Black organizations could come. The difference with the Black Equity Alliance is that they're looking at equity issues in education, in economic development, social justice, those kinds of areas that bring blacks to parity with the general society. Slightly different twist, but a very admirable and worthwhile cause, because as you know, civil rights has been replaced by silver rights in a way. You know, so we need to look at how we build wealth in our communities and hold on to that for the betterment of the next generation. So we partnered.
Okay.
Right. We partnered with them this year because of the mutuality of our goals. The mission of the New York Urban League historically has been about education, employment, and anti-racist work, and those are the pillars of our foundation and our mission today. And so in doing the State of Black New York, we agreed upon several key areas: the building, construction industry, education, housing, of course, health, the role of faith in our communities. John Morning did a particularly unique piece on the Black presence on corporate boards and boards of influence. We had authors from New School University, Derek Hamilton and Dennis Derrick, looking deeply at the construction trades industry. Dr. Adelaide Sanford did a piece for us, prefacing the education needs in our community. So we've put together quite a bevy of important voices for the Black community in this document.
Now, the way they did this was to do their own independent research and writing, and then you took it and incorporated it into a larger report. Correct. So this, in a sense, represents their view, but does it represent the view of the New York Urban League?
Yes, it does. We agreed very early on that this was not going to be simply a research piece. We've had any number of documents that illuminate the problem, but then make no move to change that. We were very clear with our authors that we were about change. We wanted near-term recommendations, not pie-in-the-sky recommendations. We wanted their opinions to be research and fact-based, so everything that in this book we could stand behind. And therefore, we agreed that we were going to move the needle on these issues collectively. So, for instance, you know, we're doing a forum at Medgar Evers College with the new leadership division at Medgar Evers College, looking at criminal justice. The hundreds of thousands of Black men, Latino men, and women who are coming back to our communities with no ability for jobs, being barred from public housing, not having their crime, if you will, marked, paid in full. They're going to pay the rest of their lives, can't vote. So how do we change those things? That's disenfranchisement in 2007. Yes, they made a mistake. Yes, they served their time, but their time should be marked, paid in full.
That's an interesting issue because It is an issue that the public is very concerned about. On one hand, they're concerned about people who commit crimes or allegedly commit crimes. And on the other hand, they're concerned about bringing people back into the society. So the New York Urban League has a specific role of highlighting the facts, but then the advocates, the ones who run the marches and so on, take that information and keep pushing it. So there's a push-pull there in terms of how do you get people's attention. Now, I imagine you must be involving some of the political people in this, because eventually it will require change in laws.
Absolutely.
Some of the laws that keep felons from voting and getting to public housing, some are easier to deal with than others, like public housing is easier to deal with than voting. On the other hand, it does require an analysis and bringing the black community along. Because it isn't just the white community, it's the black community that's concerned about having ex-felons in their midst.
Correct. And you're right, the legislative process is very important in this. We made a commitment to the New Leadership Conference as well as with Eddie Ellis and Dr.
Now,
Divine
who's the
Pryor.
New Leadership Conference? These
are the folks at McEvis College that have spearheaded the work around advocacy for the formerly incarcerated. Their piece is brilliant. You know, I've learned some things in reading their piece in this document, The State of Black New York 2007. And my commitment through the Urban League to them was to advocate with them, with our legislators. Again, once someone has fulfilled their time, it should be marked paid in full and not have continuing punishment because of voting, job access, housing access, etc.
But what do you do about the fact that there's the recidivism question? People who paid their time and are on parole and then they commit another crime, and the public is concerned about that. Now, clearly they should have the opportunity to wipe the slate clean, but the general public will say, well, why do you want to do that?
Well, you know, we're losing talent. Just because, you know, the Rockefeller drug laws, for instance, zero tolerance. So anyone with, you know, a joint or a small amount of drugs can be arrested and have to serve mandatory sentences. That doesn't mean that this person has fulfilled a life of crime and they should be behind bars the rest of their lives. I think part of the American dream is also about rehabilitation. How do you, and certainly our faith teaches us about rehabilitation. So why are we treating this segment of our population any differently? Yes, they made a mistake. Yes, they paid for that mistake. But where are the pathways to gainful employment? Where can these men and women return to have a job and therefore support their families? You know, because you jail one parent, sometimes in a one-parent household, what happens to those kids? They're in the foster care system. You know, so there are more expenses to continuing punishment than there are to rehabilitation. And so we're on the rehabilitation path with Eddie Ellis and Divine Pryor.
How are you going to carry this message? The report is a good first start. The competent evidence is a good start. But just like many other issues that are here, the housing issue, the education issues, it requires a massive movement to help change some of these decades-old behaviors, both on the part of government and on the part of the people themselves. So what's going to be your plan for getting this word out, other than coming to African-American legislators?
And hope to be invited back as well with some of the authors of the document as well. Well, first of all, you know, we said this offline, we produced this document and are distributing it free of charge. You can get it by requesting it from the New York Urban League or Black Equity Alliance, or going on either of our websites.
How would they contact the Urban League or the Equity Alliance?
Easiest way is our website, nyul.org, that's the Urban League website, or Black Equity Alliance spelled out.org. The full document is fully downloadable on both of our websites. So the idea was distributed free of charge to all the legislators in the state of New York, to college presidents, to foundation officers, to commissioners, to nonprofit leaders, faith-based leaders, political leaders, because we want this in the hands of people who are ready to use it. We've asked Congressman Rangel, for instance, to host a legislative breakfast for all the elected officials in the state where we can do a briefing. This is Black Equity Alliance, the Urban League, and the authors, so that we can talk to them specifically about the recommendations and change that needs to occur. All these changes don't take dollars. You know, for instance, you can learn to be a barber in prison, but the number of barber licenses that are available in any given year are so minuscule that it's almost like false hope. I can come out and get a job, but I can't really get a job because I can't be licensed to do that. There are many of those kinds of changes that can be made by our legislators to help people get back into the work path and therefore becoming productive citizens. Similarly in education, David Banks, the head of the Eagle Academy, sponsored by the 100 Black Men, which you know well, and Adelaide Sanford, talk about the cultural competency and academic excellence that's now emerging from our schools when we can have leaders from our community who understand what the issues are and make a difference than having humongous public schools that are not doing our kids justice. And even with increase in reading scores and increase in graduation rates, we're still looking at 40,000 plus young people every year who are dropping out of high schools and public schools in New York City. That's a tragedy.
Well, you mentioned two very important things, getting ex-offenders back into the society and the workforce and education. But going through this report, there really are dozens and dozens of recommendations. Black folks have had a tough time. They're doing better now than they were doing 50 years ago, but they're not doing what they ought to be doing with the rest of the population. For example, average income of the average black family is about 68% of the average white family. That's a problem. Now, when you go to legislators and you go to advocates, how do you prioritize these recommendations? Because each one of them are absolutely necessary. Now, one of the jobs of a leader like you and the organization is to prioritize them. Now, do you prioritize on the basis of what issue is hot right now, or do you prioritize them on the basis of the issue that you can get the most success on, or do you prioritize them with the issue that a particular legislature really wants to hit on, or you do all of those?
Well, you know, for the New York Urban League, we have three priorities. It's about education, it's about employment, and it's about anti-racism work. So those are the three things that we focus on. All those issues are embedded. If you talk about health, I don't believe you can be a healthy citizen without educating yourself about the health options you have. And understanding what your doctor or your healthcare professional is telling you, and therefore having the discipline to implement that. You can be given information, but if you're not going to take the information, then what the heck's the point? You're not going to be any healthier just because you had a doctor's visit. You have to do what the doctor recommends. So we have those three recommendations, and those three priorities. But for all the authors and our allies, the Black Equity Alliance, we're looking at change in all of these areas with different coalitions, different groups. So that, for instance, we're collaborating with McGivers College, like I said, in the New Leadership Conference around the return of former felons and former criminals to the community, the formerly incarcerated. We're working with the education arena to create, we're looking at perhaps creating a school of for ourselves. Through the New York Urban League.
Do you really want to do that? Because you want to deal with the whole city. There are 1,400 schools. Does the Urban League need to be one of those 1,400?
Well, you know, again, when I see the success of an Eagle Academy, and I see the success of many small schools around the city, do we want to be part of the solution or just advocate for the solution? And I think, you know, at one point in time, the New York Urban League had 17 schools under the rubric of the street academies here. Alternative schools had a great track record in graduating young people and getting them off into college. So why not? I don't see a reason why not just yet, perhaps.
I agree with the why not, but it's a question of resource allocation. How much of your efforts and money are you going to spend on that as against the health issue, or the housing issue, or the employment issue? For example, the employment issue probably is as important as any, given that the unemployment rate for African Americans is double that of whites.
Right.
And the Urban League was really founded on the basis of helping people to get jobs and to fight discrimination and to get housing and so on. So how do you prioritize? That goes back to the question earlier.
No, and that's a good question, and we want to be held accountable. Our other priority is employment. We just launched 2 employment centers, one in Harlem, one in Brownsville, looking at 5 high-growth industries in the city, including building trades and auto technology and healthcare professionals, et cetera. And we're looking to pipeline our folks through trainings that lead to jobs. These are not abstract trainings or trainings where good luck to you after the training is over. These jobs are readily available right now.
You would do the training?
We are brokering, pipelining people to the folks who do the training. Consortium for Worker Education, for instance. There are a lot of good certified training programs, and the jobs are waiting for people at the end
What
of
are
the
some of these jobs?
Well, automotive tech. For instance, we met with the president of the Greater New York Auto Dealers Association. There are 600 automotive technical jobs open right now. If they had the talent, those 600 people would be working. So how do we pipeline people into the training that leads to those jobs? And this is working on cars, everything from Hyundai to Maybach and everything in between. So the Fords, the GMs, you know, the Chryslers, whatever.
And who does the training for these?
Lincoln Tech, which is partly funded by the Greater New York Auto Dealers Association. And so they have the capacity, they have the seats, they have the know-how, they have the connections. They don't have the pipeline. And so we're going to help provide the pipeline. Similarly, you asked about Larry Seabrooks before.
Councilman Larry Seabrooks.
Yes, Councilman Larry Seabrooks was instrumental in holding the advertising industry feet to the fire. And because of that, a Diversity Development Advisory Council has been formed, spearheaded by H. Carl McCall, former controller, former ambassador. I am on that committee as well. And the idea there is to help increase the black hirings, working with black advertising firms, creating black advertising firms, creating a pipeline of talent, and looking at Medgar College as a possibility of doing that. Pipelining talent so that we are better represented in the advertising industry. We don't have the faux pas that we've seen by major corporations when it comes to addressing the perceptions of the black community. And so those are important issues to address. It also means that the jobs we're pursuing are family-sustaining wage jobs. These are not $7 an hour jobs. These are jobs we could raise a family in New York City. We know how expensive that can be.
Well, let's look at that.
Sure.
Are there that many jobs that can narrow this unemployment gap?
Sure.
Because you say sure easily, but the recent economy has caused people to be laid off in the financial industry, in the retail industry. Not that you shouldn't be doing this, but the challenge, I think, is very great to sort of laser-like approach certain industries where they can be people hired, because one of the major things that differentiate people who work and known is lack of skills, the lack of being able to write and count and reason. And that's why the education part is so important to relate to the employment part. But on a short-term basis, you're focusing on the construction industry, the automotive tech industry. The advertising industry is not really going to be something that you can easily bring people into because it requires previous skills and previous experience.
Well, that's true, but you know, the goal of the Urban League all along has been to serve black community broadly. So it's not just those at the entry level position. I mean, last year we gave away $540,000 in scholarships to the historically black colleges and 40 others to individuals. And so that's a pipeline to the skill set that you're talking about. Why not be the next CPA or CEO or advertising exec or account manager or government community affairs person in these major corporations? So that pipeline is working, so to speak. We could do better, but it's working. What seems to be missing, for instance, in the construction trades industry, they're now bringing in people, importing workers from Europe, from the former Soviet Union.
Who already have the skills.
Who already have the skills, or who, because the sons and daughters of the traditional union members are not going into those trades. They've gotten their college education and they're doing something else. And that's the way the world works. People do better for their children, families, they move up, other people move in. We're trying to be part of that group that moves in into the building trades. And from things I've read, Roscoe, you've seen these studies as well. Anywhere from $10 to $12 billion in construction is going to go on between now and 2015. You know, so that's lots of jobs. In every area, whether it's a Columbia University, a World Trade Center, a new Nets stadium, a new Yankee stadium, a new Met stadium, the list goes on. The list goes on, and we are not present in those areas.
What does it take to attract them? For example, if somebody's watching this show and they hear about these jobs, what do? Call you, call the construction industry, call a college? How do they get into this?
Certainly, you could speak to our employment director at the New York Urban League, 212-926-8000.
Say that again.
212-926-8000. 8,000. Our employment director is Corwin Spivey. He'll be delighted to work with people. We have a small computer center. We help people refurbish their resumes if that's what's needed. We practice interview skills. We just signed a deal with Monster.com to, again, pipeline diverse talent into the variety of jobs they have. It'll be a co-branded website that'll be shared by the Urban League and Monster.com. So there are a variety of ways to get in. The point is, though, how do we, who've been moderately successful or somewhat successful, help those behind us who have not been so? And the education and employment arenas are two of the pillars of that advancement.
There's only so much you can do, but do you have a mentoring type program? I know you have the scholarship program. And again, if someone wants to be a mentor, do they contact the Urban League and volunteer? Because so much of getting things started is getting people to communicate with each other.
Sure.
And that, of course, is what this report is trying to incentivize.
The Urban League has a vibrant group of young people around it called the Young Professionals. Me and Mark Morial, our national president, did a presentation to them on Martin Luther King's birthday. 170 young people in the room. A typical meeting for them is 125 people. And we're gearing them to replace ourselves. I mean, how do we help that very well credentialed, ambitious, career-minded young person begin to deliver community service, be a mentor, be a teacher, be an aide to someone else in the community? How do we help them develop a servant leader mentality as well as pursuing their career? How do we help them give back? And so the Young Professionals at the Urban League are a venue for them to do that. They're doing tutoring in schools. They do book bag drives for kids going back to school, fully equipped notebooks and protractors and pens and pencils and rulers and all the things a young person needs. We're age appropriate from kindergarten to high school. We do toy drives for people who are less fortunate, so that come Christmas time, there's something that the parents can help give, and it's part of the Urban League mission to assist in that way. We've done turkey giveaways and food pantry all through the Young Professionals. This is a group that's going to replace me. I'm a good steward for the Urban League today. I'm not the future of the Urban League.
Now, these are people who have their degrees and are working in corporations and government, et cetera.
Or entrepreneurs, sure.
Entrepreneurs. Now, one of the partners you haven't talked about is the partnership with the city. Your predecessor, Dennis Walcott, is the deputy mayor. What kind of relationships and programs do you have in cooperation with the city?
Well, most of our contracts are city government contracts. New York Urban League runs a $5.5 million budget. About 65% of that is city contracts, inclusive of foster prevention. We work with families whose major issues are poverty, miseducation, and lack of employment. So those are three issues we address with those families and those children. We have a fair housing program that helps landlords and tenants solve mutual problems in a mediated way before going to court. We have a program, as I mentioned earlier, the employment program that we now set up in Brownsville and in Harlem, and we're hoping that we'll get word somewhere soon to do one in Staten Island.
And that's funded by the city,
all funded by the city. We also have a senior program out in Corona and East Elmhurst that serves some 1,200 homebound seniors. And we broker services for them, whether it's shopping or cleaning or cooking, being sure that they have someone checking in with them about their health, getting them to health care appointments and those kinds of things. So most of those are city contracts. We're meeting with some folks this afternoon, as a matter of fact, so by the time this airs, it will be some 2 or 3 weeks ago. But we're meeting with them to explore the possibilities of starting a small school. And so we're meeting with the folks at the Department of Education who are in charge of that to see, is that feasible for us? We're at the exploratory stage.
Now, you have branches in various boroughs. So where are the branches located?
We're in Brownsville, Brooklyn, on Hopkins Avenue. We're in Corona, Queens. We're on the North Shore of Staten Island, and we're in Harlem. Those are 4 offices, and all this can be found on the website nyul.org.
And now, do you welcome people to come into the office and volunteer their services?
Absolutely.
And ask questions? Because I know that's been the tradition of the Urban League.
Sure, they can pick up copies of the State of Black New York. They can pick up brochures about all the program offerings we offer throughout the city. There are opportunities on the website to volunteer. There are opportunities on the website to donate. There are opportunities on the website to participate in the number of events that we do, whether it's a Black History Month event or a Champions of Diversity or the Frederick Douglass Dinner, or the second longest running event we have is the Football Classic that raises our scholarship and education money for the New York Urban League and historically Black colleges. So there are multiple ways for people to participate in the New York Urban League.
Now, I noticed part of your support system is the Community Service Society, David Jones.
Yes.
How closely do you work with this Community Service Society?
Well, David and the Community Service Society have been strong advocates for moving the needle on poverty and the poor and the unemployed. And so, they wrote a piece in here that is absolutely fantastic, and that we're looking at creating, and this again exploratory, we'll see if we can participate in this, looking at creating an academy that might pipeline service workers into the foster care industry. There are not enough Black and brown people in that industry taking care of other Black and brown children, because that's who 80% of the foster care population is. So do we create a training academy that helps pipeline that talent into those jobs? Because like in the nonprofit arena broadly, 50% of us as CEOs and high-level managers will be retiring in the next 5 to 10 years. Who are we preparing to replace us?
Well, clearly, as we've been talking today, you've been talking about the role of the New York Urban League as a catalyst, as a pipeline, as a motivator. And you, as the CEO, Darwin Davis, have done a great job of moving us along, along with your various supporters. Today on African American Legends, we've been talking about the State of Black New York, which was issued by the New York Urban League.